No director or team goes out of their way to make a bad film. They arrive on set aspiring for something more. But just like a result can be greater than the sum of its parts, the same can be held true in negative terms.
I refuse to let arithmetic decide questions like that.
But I'm not here to just point fingers and cry foul for the sake of it. Instead, I want to try and understand a why. But why can be trickier than just analyzing the mechanics. We must also explore the subjective nature of any movie's reception.
What the hell is this?
So without further ado, let's roll up those sleeves and venture into the concrete jungle of Predator 2. For the purpose of this analysis, we'll be comparing this film, Predator 2, released in 1990, to the original Predator, released in 1987.
Mike? Bill, this is quite a surprise. What brings you down from the palace?
Why don't we start with the easiest comparison we can make? That is, the change in lead from a certain Arnold Schwarzenegger to Mr. Danny Glover, who by 1990 had garnered mass recognition for his role as Roger Murtaugh in the Lethal Weapon franchise.
Just been revoked.
But even so, he was still largely overshadowed by Arnold's stardom. And let's be honest, this movie was always going to be on the back foot even before any viewers laid eyes on it. But what can we say about Glover's portrayal of Mike Harrigan? He's the hard-ass, no-nonsense LAPD officer with a penchant for disobeying orders, destroying police cruisers, and flowery language.
More mutilation! Fuck you!
And let me just add that there's nothing wrong with Glover's execution, it's more of a problem with the writing. And this issue is not only isolated to our lead, but it extends into the other cast members as well. These characters get very little background information and next to no motivating factors behind their actions. Barring one. Let's put a pin on this. But wait, you say, can't the same be said about the first movie? Oh, you silly goose. No. You see,
You son of a bitch.
while somewhat limited, we do get some hints behind the history of the characters that Arnold and Carl Weathers play. In fact, we are shown the true nature of their strained friendship not through the initial exposition, but as the two men are being hunted by the Predator. Now, I'm not saying it's anything groundbreaking, but it is there.
Dylan, we make a stand now, or there will be nobody left to go to the chopper.
And even though these movies are being watched for the purpose of pure entertainment, we as the viewer still need some kind of something in order to feel any form of emotional tie to these characters. But what about Mike Harrigan? Well, let's just say he ran out of bubblegum.
Now get back to your cage at Alvarado! I'll show you how to no.
But let's be fair, I did allude to earlier that there is one motivating factor for our characters, or character in this case, and it can be found here. But this doesn't happen until about 36 minutes into the film, and honestly, I can't spot any differences between Mike Harrigan's actions before and after. So to summarize, in one corner we have a badass elite mercenary, Major Alan Dutch Schaefer, who is tricked by his old pal
Dylan!
into taking what he thought was a rescue mission.
Knock, knock.
And wouldn't you know it, there just happens to be an extraterrestrial killing machine that swings by our neck of the woods during the hottest years. Oh yeah. Oh, and Dutch loses his entire team of badasses in the process.
A hero. Not the hero we deserved, but the hero we needed. Nothing less than a knight. Shining.
And in the other corner, we have a badass police officer who loves to get into fights, disregards orders, and gets his closest friend and colleague killed due to said insubordination. It's missing that.
I'm no hero. Never was. Never will be.
I was expecting the story to take Mike through the whole, I'm no hero. I'm just a jaded detective, numb to all the senseless violence that grips our streets. If it weren't for Danny Boy, I don't know if I'd be able to stave off my demons. And what are we going to do about the new kid, Jerry? They call him the Lone Ranger. Sounds like a hero. And heroes don't last long in this town. Then, while investigating a string of bloody killings in a legal manner, Danny Archuleta is killed by the Predator. The manhunt is on, but now it's personal. I mean, that's not far off from what we actually got, because the story and setting is serving it up for the taking. They just never explored this angle. But that's just my 2 cents. Let's now shift our focus and take our critical eye on to the next scene. Why am I talking like this? The first thing that struck me was just how cool the cuts and transitions were. They are stylish and complementary to the hyperbolic future world of 1997 LA, and yes, this movie was set 7 years in the future from the time of its release, and in this regard I would say the sequel did a better job. However, it must be noted that the shot compositions of the first film were chosen for the primary goal of inducing a claustrophobic atmosphere. So while the scenes weren't as flashy, they were arguably better at setting the tone. A prime example of how the individual parts add up to more, huh? And Predator 2 does have its share of standout scenes that replicate that tension we felt in the first film. One such example can be found here and here. And these feel right at home with the whole notion of being stalked by an invisible enemy, but then they are juxtaposed with the rather over-the-top action and off-key humor that litters the rest of the production.
Don't make me use this thing! Please! That much bigger than yours! I'll take that! Yes, again!
In the visual effects category, this movie is definitely a step up. A step up. Being 3 years younger. Three years younger? Wait, who wrote this? Is that... It came out 3 years later, hence the effects are better than the original film because it's newer. And while upon viewing now, some of these have not aged as well, it is important to note that these effects are non-digital in nature. That is, it predates the digital revolution that would take hold in the following years.
Okay, who's next?
So with that said, I don't believe the quality of the effects or how they're perceived by audiences now can carry enough weight to shift our decision on whether or not we enjoy this movie. So let's just move it along, right? Move along.
There's no stopping what can't be stopped. No killing what can't be killed.
Hey, makes sense, man.
So far, we've established that the movie has its flaws, but there are aspects of it that should make it stand out more than it does. So what went wrong? For one thing, the switch of setting from the exotic jungles of Central America to the concrete jungle of early 90s LA may have been seen as a huge letdown for the moviegoers at the time. There were no shortages of films depicting LA as a gritty and crime-ridden city. Combine it with the real socio-economic issues that plague the city, and what we have here may just be a case of fatigue over the setting. And lastly, what I think was the final piece of the puzzle that painted this picture in a rather negative manner is just how depressing the film can be. Maybe depressing isn't the right word, but it's definitely not lighthearted. As I stated earlier, Arnold's Dutch was a much more likable character.
Stick around.
Although he's a mercenary for hire, he has moral lines he won't cross.
We a rescue team, not assassins.
I'm less tricked into it. So when his team begins to fall one by one, we are rooting for his group to survive.
Run! Go! Get to the chopper!
In contrast, Danny Glover's Mike Harrigan is a loose cannon from the get-go. His compulsion to continue to disregard orders to hunt for the predator gets his friends killed.
We didn't hear that. Let's go. You're the boss.
Let's go.
Upon which he then wears a thin mantle of revenge over top the already established unrelenting obsession. So when Mike comes out on top from the one-on-one bout with his arch nemesis, the Predator, I'm left with a somewhat empty feeling. Not necessarily negative, just meh. With all that said, I don't think this movie was as bad as memory served. When I sat down to watch it for the purpose of this video, I was actually rather entertained. I was, dare I say, having fun. Thank you for sticking to the end. And as a treat, we're gonna end today's show with a special performance by the always enigmatic Mr. Satan. Take it away, son.